excellent afternoon to all those who are watching me across Lagos, Nigeria. Yes, when business partners meet, they discuss business ideas and finances. But when global leaders meet, their discussion is targeted at the condition of over 7.7 billion people on the planet. Again, I say welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. I remain your convener, Kike Lomaton. And of course, I have the house husband in the house, the Real Talker. How you doing, man? How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I couldn't hold my amusement inside. You know what? When business partners meet, they discuss business. What about when love partners meet? What do they discuss?
Can you please be serious on this platform? Whatever discussion you'll be having. Guys, I think it's important for us to go on the next segment of the show before Marshall, turn it into something else. 8 years ago, Nigerian Union of Nigeria, NUT, directed its members to ignore the 22nd of September 2014, I think to be precise. Let's listen to the reason for this directive from our On This Day History segment. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
On this date in 2014, exactly 8 years ago, Nigeria Union of Teachers, NUT, directed its members to ignore the 22nd of September 2014 resumption date of primary and secondary schools in Nigeria announced by the federal government. National President of NUT, Comrade Michael Olukoya, gave the directive while briefing journals in Abuja. According to him, the teachers should only resume if the federal government sufficiently trained and provide them with necessary preventive and protective gadgets on Ebola virus. But where the federal government insists on the 22nd September 2014 date, in spite of wise counsel, the union would rather direct teachers to resume schools whenever they are sufficiently trained and their schools have been provided with the necessary preventive and protective gears.
All right, many thanks for staying with us. Marshall, quickly, what's your take on this day in history segment?
Oh, well, federal government was trying to twist the schools to go back and start. But I mean, schools starting their ground to say, look, if we don't have the prerequisite or rather requisite facility to get us to wage the appropriate war against the Ebola, we might not have to resume. And I think that was a very, very noble stand by the schools there. Because remember that these schools too are going to go back to school, a resumption, and then make money too. If they had resumed, they would have made money and been in business. But for them to have forfeited, that opportunity just for to have the right facility or the right gadgets in place to prevent the spread of Ebola, that was very, very noble. It brings to mind the Stella Atanda-Owo of blessed memory and her sacrifice in the fight against Ebola.
Many thanks for that submission. I think it's important for us to get a quick message so that we can go straight to the topic at hand. Please stay with us. Let's get a quick message from our sponsors. We'll be right back. All right, the 77th United Nations General Assembly, which held yesterday, Wednesday, in New York, was with the presence and attendance of our dear President Buhari, amongst other world leaders, diplomats, and ambassadors. And the global convergence of national leaders witnessed the discussion of challenges affecting people across the globe in terms of collectivity and also facing individual countries, peculiarly to what is affecting them each. Some of the challenges discussed were climate change, tourism, standard of living, and economic changes. And President Muhammadu Buhari's speech, he promised a smooth transition while also pleading for debt pardon. And on the show today to discuss President Muhammadu Buhari's speech at his 77th United Nations General Assembly, we have Professor Bola Akiterewa, the Director General of Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategy. Again, I think before we quickly invite our guests via our virtual line, let's quickly look at his profile and we'll be right back. All right, welcome to the show, Professor Akitarewa. It's a pleasure to have you on Real Talk with Kike show today. How are you doing today, sir? Many thanks for honoring my invite. Are you there? Can you hear me, sir? All right, I think let's try and while the technical director is trying to resolve the issues right there.
Prof is finding his way around those gadgets, you know, but we hope he finds his way so that we can hear from him. Because
But
what we're looking at is analyzing the content of President Muhammadu Buhari's speech at the General Assembly. It was loaded with so much. And at a time when Nigerians are anticipating a dynamic change in the political affairs of the country ahead of the 2023 general election, and President Muhammadu Buhari really churned out some great nuggets for what to expect in the 2023 elections. We had thought at some time that we knew it all with President Muhammadu Buhari and the ruling APC, but you know, quite impressive speech at the General Assembly there. It's been very highly commendable. So we would like to look at some of the aspects of the President's speech. We don't know if we have Prof back up.
all right, we're still trying to reconnect to Prof, you know, but thus far, let me quickly ask you, what's your take? You know, for me, it's laughable that, you know, we can go on such platform and ask for, you know, for our debt to be wiped off. What's your take on this quickly? From a president, for a sitting president who the Minister for Finance and Budget have been saying that they've been borrowing money reasonably.
Well, yes, you can say it's laughable, but it wouldn't be laughable if, yes, it's laughable, I agree with you. Why is it laughable? Maybe if the appropriate moves were taken, if the, I mean, former President Olusegun Obasanjo did not go to a General Assembly such as this to ask for his debt or the country's debt, not his debt, because it was the government of Nigeria that took those funds, to ask for the debt to be wiped off before he had that kind of, would I say, a rebate or something that brought our debt down. Right moves were made at the right quarters, and right applications were also made. To have the president at that podium, yes, asked for it. But I wouldn't also blame him, because I was trying to say, while it is still laughable, it is not excusable, because the country right now is grappling with a lot on his plate. I mean, I don't envy the president at this point, where he's at the helm of affairs and he can glaringly see how broke the country is. He can glaringly see the economic challenges that is grappling the country. And a man of that caliber might just think, look, I am appearing before the high and mighty when it comes to the United Nations. I might as well, you know, drop it there. But let's also remember that it is about 20% to say, we might be 20% correct if we say the president writes the speech himself. Let's not forget that there are a team of people who puts this thing together for him to go and deliver. But yes, it has to be in tandem with what he is thinking. It has to be in tandem with his political constructions, you know. So I don't think that they'll just give him something to go read there without his insertions in that speech, his own personal injections in that speech. So yes, if it was me, I don't think I would not be tempted to go before the hoi polloi and the high and mighty to say, look, I want our debts cleared for us. But why I would have people back home like Kike laughing at me if I do that, because I went myself to collect all this debt and we're still, you know, borrowing, and that's why it's laughable. Yes.
All right, let's go on a quick break, and by the time we return, I hope that we'll be able to connect our guests to throw more light on the subject at hand. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right. Hello, sir. Are you there now? Can you hear me? Can, can you unmute yourself, please? Your device. Yes, please. All right, while we're still trying to reconnect to our guest right now, is it possible for us to play the president's speech for those who missed that, so that they can have an understanding of our conversation? All right, so Marshall, we're still trying to get all the necessary electronic connection right. With all that has happened, are you there now? Can you hear me, sir?
Okay.
All right. So I just want us to have an overview, an over submission with his speech and all of that, and also the people that were present at the event. What's your take on it thus far, even with the people that were there?
Well, the fact that, of course, the United Nations General Assembly has always been what it is. The fact that Nigeria is also putting a bid for or suing for peace in neighboring troubled countries where we've seen military coups, where we've seen crisis, and Nigeria is also throwing its arms open to give, armed forces and foot soldier contribution to some of the crisis-ridden countries. Commendable. It's the kind of things we find in the United Nations General Assembly, where you find bilateral relations and agreements being fine-tuned, and you also find issues like global warming being discussed, and participation of countries on these matters. For us, Nigeria, overall, I think the President's presence and speech at the submissions at the General Assembly has been commendable in terms of its content and what it has to portend, especially ahead of the 2023 general elections. And the President's stand on saying that he would ensure that he would not interfere and ensure that the elections are transparent, asserting that he would leave one of the most credible, he would leave a record for one of the most credible elections to be conducted in Nigeria. That is quite impressive.
Yeah, I like what you just shared, Marsha, but let me come back to what on this day in history segment even reminded us about Ebola and all of that. Why is it that much was not said about post-COVID-19, terrorists, climate change, the technology, all the challenges that we're actually facing in Nigeria was not highlighted in his speech? Why do you think that was?
Well, you cannot, you see, in a country where you have Kike, Nigeria is very peculiar. We have so many things bedeviling the country. And like I said earlier, I do not envy the man called President Muhammadu Buhari at this juncture. In fact, I have come to even feel for him so much. He's been so pushed on the matters of Nigeria to the extent at one time he had to express his tiredness of that position, to say, look, he can't wait to even get out of office. So with all that is bedeviling the nation, I do not think that he would find it in one kitty. He would find it in one purse to deliver at that podium, on that podium. So if he couldn't touch on some aspects, like some people will say, oh, he did not touch on the need for us to reverberate or rejuvenate our educational system, Well, we do know that even as a nation internally, we've really not budgeted much for education. We've really not prioritized education. Somebody will come up and say, why didn't the president harp on education and all of that? Especially when ASU has been on strike, especially when NAN is saying, look, they want to support ASU. The National Assembly is in talks with NANS to drop that. One will say that should have been the president's focus at that podium. But no, the man has a lot on his plate.
He has a lot on his plate. I quite understand that, Let me quickly use this opportunity to open our phone lines for those who are tuning in right now, watching us. Remember that you can be part of this conversation by calling the studio number 080-988-77400. You know, the world, engaged supply is one of the major contention affecting the global, the global outreach, or the globe, so to speak, especially when it comes to Europe and other African countries after when Russian and Ukraine war took place. So in my head, I'm just thinking, what sort of approach, do you think our leaders right now are supposed to be using to solve some of the crises that we are going through, knowing that a lot of diplomats, a lot of ambassadors and the likes were there, and this would be President Muhammadu Buhari's last event at the what's it called again? United Nations Assembly, House of Assembly. So what's your take on this?
Well, Kike, truth of the matter is that the war between Ukraine and Russia has come quite far. It has come quite far. And we've seen series of emergency meetings with the world powers, concentrating or to discuss the war on Ukraine, or the Ukraine-Russia war. And we've not really seen much of their impact or input in ameliorating the problems or mediating to the extent that we will see a huge impact of their contributions in that regard.
All right. We have a caller on the line, Marcus from Benin City. Marcus, many thanks for calling. What's your contribution on the topic at hand?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, my contribution to this topic, I want to first and foremost greet you guys for the job that you are doing. I think at this junction that we are in, what the president submitted, his speech at the UN General Assembly is not really, it does not really reflect per se what the country is facing right now. Because we are actually facing a lot of challenges in this country in terms of insecurity, ASU strike, economic and the like. So, but for me, I would have expected that the president would have addressed some of these critical issues. In a country that are always borrowing, and we keep borrowing, and we are even still asking to borrow.
Oh.
All right, apologies. I have to let that go. Masha, over to you.
Yeah, so I just said it. I mean, we're all here when I said, look, somebody would say ASU strike. That has been on the front burners for as long as we can remember, since the 14th day in the month of February in the year of our Lord 2022. It's been ASU strike, and very recently ASU strike became hotter with NANS, having their back. And then the industrial court, equally, the federal government dragging them to industrial court. But forgive me, I am a lover of ASU and what's happening right now, but I do not think that's the kind of matter that the president will be tabling at the United Nations General Assembly. If he was asked about it, of course, we can now maybe make some extractions from what his responses would be. But as a president addressing world leaders, diplomats before the United Nations General Assembly, I do not think he'll be talking about ASU strike. Maybe intelligently he would have found a way to chip it in and talk about how his country's educational system seemed to be in disarray and dissatisfaction of lecturers in that regard. But on a general note, he would talk about things that would be more bilateral in nature, more international in nature, things that would have a wider scope of interest on the global front than what is affecting the nation. And that's why I'll toe Kike's line a little bit when she spoke about why is he not talking about issues like COVID, because you see, some people have called it a pandemic, and some people are beginning to have certain retrospection on the COVID-19. That I would expect to find on the banners, on the tables of the United Nations General Assembly, and nations talking about how they individually were able to combat it, and the controversies surrounding the conspiracies, not controversies, conspiracies surrounding the COVID-19 and how we dealt with it.
Marshall, another interesting thing for me is the fact that, our president spoke about technology, the input of advancement of democracy through freedom of expression, fundamental human rights, in terms of speech, and however, I cannot bring back to memory how this present administration actually banned Twitter. And I'm wondering, is he, for lack of a better word, is he a double-faced
two-faced
approach or character
Kike.
that I would like to put it right now, that if someone like him could ban Twitter, how come he will go to such platform and talk about, fundamental human right, which was part of the freedom of speech and expression? What's your take on this?
We've seen Lai Mohammed come out recently to promote one or two social media and talk about how Nigerians would need to, bolster one or two things with the promotion of social media and all of that.
All right, let me interrupt your line of thought. We have Philip from Edo State. Philip, many thanks for calling. What's your contribution on the topic at hand, please? Please, can you reduce the volume of your TV set first? Can you please reduce the volume of your TV set?
My TV is not on.
Okay, all right, go ahead, please.
My light is even gone. That's what I'm saying. Okay. If he is requesting for a loan, maybe for them to wipe all the loan, if it is possible for him to use the money he has borrowed to put up a light for us to enjoy our life, I think that one would be good. Thank you.
Oh, Philip.
All right, go ahead, Marshall.
Well, Philip, we're all in it together. I think he said at the beginning that his light is even gone, and talking about the loans and all that. In fact, someone was asking me, why didn't the president mention Abacha's loot? Because Abacha seems to be running the economy of Nigeria year in, year out. His loot never ends. And if you're right, Philip, if he could if we could get some waivers, and then those waivers are factored into the social amenities that we would require as Nigerians. I agree with you, but the matter here is I do not know why the aspect of interactions does not include some kind of debate, some kind of, not necessarily, for lack of a better word, confrontation. If these leaders can be confronted with some very, very urgent things that are affecting their countries, because we do see how other leaders, other countries will discuss issues of Nigeria or issues of other countries on their own, and even have opinions, shape their own opinions about these things. For instance, we've seen how other nations talk about Nigeria and Boko Haram, and they have an opinion about corruption and Nigerian politicians. And when they come together on that stage, we don't see much of such interaction or much of such confrontation. That is the kind of thing I'd be looking forward to in the United Nations General Assembly, and not talking about, global warming, part of it, yes, because it's something that is really affecting our nation, and it's something we really need to do something drastic about. But I'd also expect that we will see these global leaders confront each other on the need to grow their economy, on the need to do right things before the global space, But we don't see much of that. If we could begin to see much more of that in the General Assembly, then maybe leaders will begin to sit up, And that's why Kike was saying, President Buhari talking about fostering or promoting human rights and all of that, and then she couldn't juxtapose that with the ban on Twitter. That's, like a two-faced kind of thing. But remember again, it is people like Kike that write the president's speech. Yeah, you're looking at me. It's people like you, So you don't blame the president for all that was delivered, but you cannot take it away from him entirely. By and large, this speech at the General Assembly has come highly commendable. Again, the president has stated that he will not interfere in the 2023 general election. 2023 general election is something that is on the banners, and I was impressed that he brought it up and he took a stand on it before the global audience, not just global audience, but global leaders.
All right, many thanks for that great submission right there. I think we should go on a quick break and try and see if we can connect to our guest again. We'll be right back. Stay. All right, many thanks for staying with us. We have been dissecting, discussing the current appearance of our president in the New York, regarding the United Nations and all of that. And this will be his last appearance. Quite a number of things were discussed, and it was really strong on leaving a good legacy when it comes to the poll, that's the election, the electoral probe. But quickly, let's touch on our trendings while we're still trying to see if we can connect to our guest, hopefully before we wrap up the show. And the first trending story that caught our attention, Marshall, is that of the two men that were arrested, that were tussling, what's it called? Is it the
rifle? The
rifle with the policemen. What's your take on this? It's ridiculous.
Kike, Nigerians have had it up to here, with so many things. And the frustration is real. The hunger, the madness. Remember that a hungry man is a what? I hear behind the camera saying an angry man. Nigerians are hungry, and then you stop in Nigeria and you begin to infringe on that person's right and space. You would expect anything. When I saw that video, on no account should anybody struggle with an armed man, whether legally armed or illegally armed. On no account should you, not even when it's legal, like a policeman, on no account should you struggle with a policeman with his rifle. You don't even know the state of mind of that policeman. You don't even know if he's in his right senses. I do not know what the policeman was said to have done to the man before he jumped on the policeman and struggling with his weapon. I think we saw about 2 or 3 videos put together on the account of civilians struggling with uniformed men. It is wrong. It is utterly wrong. But again, you see, you will know that something had triggered that to push those guys to the limits where they begin to risk their lives and damn every consequence to go to that such lengths. But you see, after that, we had the statement from the police PPRO saying, talking about rights and whose rights can be infringed on, or rather, whose right has limits. To think that a statement such as a policeman can slap you and you don't have the right to react or do anything about it. And then thank God we have people like Femi Falana who came out to respond to that statement and addressed the consequence of a policeman or a uniformed man, treating a civilian like that, or a civilian like that. So if you ask me, it was madness by the civilian who jumped at the policeman and struggling with his rifle. That rifle could have gone off. Even the guy who was videoing, at some point you could see the nozzle of the gun was directed to the person who was even videoing. Anything could have happened at that point in time. I think they were just, both of them, mad people.
Mad people, you said. I just feel that can we see how Nigerians are bad at misusing opportunities? Let me start from there, because as far as I'm concerned, I follow this particular story where maybe it's, to some extent, and I saw how these two men physically assaulted the policeman, or the policemen, till one of the policemen fell on the ground, and yet one of them was still dragging, his gun with him. And I was wondering, his rifle, and I was wondering, this video gave me an impression of, if he was able to collect the rifle from him, the gun from him, I'm very sure that, it would show that the policeman. That was what came to mind. So all I'm saying here is the fact that, we are talking about end police brutality. We are talking about end SARS. We are talking about all sorts. But yet our people, are just something else. I don't understand why they want to use, the collect is gone. Look at what happened, look at what we are showing right now. But we need to respect policemen in their uniforms and in their line of duty, to be precise. And nobody likes to be disrespected in their individual offices. It's not even about just the uniform right now. It's about the fact that respect is vice versa. It's reciprocal. And the most important thing is to know that the law it's for you to understand the law, and also understand that understand your limits also under the law, Marshall, because I really do not understand why our citizens sometimes, we are quick to point fingers at these uniform men, so to speak. But the question is, we are not doing the right thing. However, the way you present yourself is also the way the police will address you. However you look at it, some people do not agree to that line of thoughts or to that code. But I feel that, let's say for instance now, you are wearing some dreadlocks and the likes and all of that, the policeman have every right to stop you sometimes. Do you understand? I know where I'm coming from, and the fact that again, just to put a finality to my thought, I just feel that they should face the law. They should not be against the law at this moment, even with all that is happening right now. And I feel that these civilians, so to speak, I don't want anybody pointing fault or the other, but it is just simple that this must not pass again and be swept under the carpet, because a lot has been learned from this, and it can happen to anybody, Marshall. And the reason why I'm actually tilting towards, sometimes how you are addressed is how they will address you. The policeman will address you. Imagine if you are in a car where your car is smelling of cigarettes, you are dressed anyhow, you have all, I know there are some responsible people who have dreadlocks, I'm not disputing that, but the question is, imagine you are going out in the evening and they see dreadlock, they see you smoking, and they like, tell me why they wouldn't stop you. Tell me why such
if that's a question, let me answer, Kike.
Yes.
It's just the same reason why we cannot blame a girl who was raped
because of how she was dressed.
That would be stereotypism. I mean, we've seen in other countries, we've seen how young presidents are very, not, for lack of a better word, exuberant is not even the right word. But I mean, we shouldn't. So if you see a Mark Zuckerberg and he's simply dressed the way he is, maybe with a rugged jeans, and then you begin to suspect this guy could be Yahoo.
No.
That's an instance. And then I see one of my guys here, one of my tech guys here, who is the most brilliant guys here in our house here, and then he's on dreads. And this is someone who is a first-class student, and he's earning a lot of money here in the TV channel where we are. And because he's with dreads, the police should have the right to stop him, to ask him questions. I don't think that's stereotypism. However, at the point where those guys were dragging the guns with the policemen, they have the right to shoot those guys. Are you aware? They have the right to shoot those guys because their lives were at risk. Like you said, if they had, repossessed that gun, those rifle from the policemen, who knows what they would have used it for? I mean, we've seen what happened to in the times of Black Lives Matters and all of that. We've seen how policemen came out afterwards to say they thought their lives were at risk, and that's why they took the defensive measures that they took. Except when you now go to court and then you x-ray the incidents that led up to the killing of somebody, you now find out that truly maybe the policeman's life wasn't at risk. But in this instance, it's clear that the lives of the policemen were totally at risk, and if anybody had opened fire on the civilians, they wouldn't have been blamed.
All right, Marshall, fantastic submission again right there. But you see, I wish you and I could banter a little bit on this dreadlock thing and how you present yourself. Because as far as I'm concerned, we should also understand that some of the challenges we are facing today, while I understand that in our environment, we need a lot of reorientation. We need a lot of unlearning. We need to understand that, the world has evolved. There's a way that certain, our children, so to speak, wants to look. It has gone away from the olden days. But we cannot forget the fact that our culture, our tradition is still holding us down on our appearances. Hence the reason why you must put that into consideration. If you are living abroad, so to speak, where in an environment where a lot of things is being embraced, again, for instance, and the likes, I don't want to use certain words and all of that, it's okay for you to dress in a certain way and the policeman will just just pass it by and say, okay, it's just a student and all of that. But in our country, we need to understand that with all the evolving that we are doing, our culture has not left us. Imagine a lady bringing a man home with dreadlocks, red hair, and the lights and all of that. The parents will frown at it, and that's exactly where my argument is tilting towards. Do you understand? Not necessarily that I'm trying to, do you understand what I'm saying? So we all need to take ownership of certain things, and I feel that this matter must not be swept under the carpet, however we look at it, because justice must be served and uniformed men must be respected. All right, on that note, we'll move to the second trending story. The second trending story that caught our attention is that of the pastor that was arrested for $1.6 million. I hope I'm correct, regarding a dual check insurance. Marshall, I'm coming to you quickly, because if I tell you how I'm thinking right now, quite a number of people say, Kike, you need to stop thinking like that. But quickly, what's your take on this?
So I did read through to find out where or how the pastor issued a due check. The RCCG pastor who was said to have, alleged to have issued a due check, and he was arrested for that. Of course, we do know that issuing a due check in Nigeria is a crime. If you're lucky enough, you just might get a slap on the wrist with your bank alerting you and all of that. But I think I really don't know how the law works with that, but I do know that it's to an extent very illegal to issue a due check. I don't know whether he went to give a donation somewhere, or it was for services or goods purchased, but I can say it's the law catching up to someone who was, probably doing something illegal. In the tune of 1-point-something million, you should know that, and that's, I think it's in foreign currency.
Yes.
Yes. So you should have known that you didn't have such money, or that, simply put, it was a clear indication to defraud somebody, and the law caught up with him.
Fantastic. The law caught up with him. Yes. Marshall, I'm sorry to say this. It's so-called men of God. I don't want to say RCCG because I once worship there.
It's out there.
Back to me.
It's out there.
But the question is, the fact that the so-called men of God are the ones that commit the most unbelievable atrocities sometimes baffles me. And I say this again, only God knows those who are worshiping him. Only God knows who is serving him. Yes,
I tell you.
I haven't fully read the whole story, just like, what's it called? Oluti was of the opinion that we must take this story and the likes and all of that. And I felt that, the pastor involved, look at him in an entangled situation. It's so awkward to me. And ever since then, I've come to understand that, our pastors have become more aware of my God that I worship might not be the same with the God that other people are worshiping. I felt liberated, that's the word, and alive when I understood the word better. For instance, let me tailor it down to sometimes when things happen to me, Marshall, I'm quick to think that, perhaps it's because I've not paid my tithes.
Karma.
Tithes. I'm always tying it down to, Kike, you've not paid your tithe this month, and all sort of thought comes to mind. However, this so-called pastor, I really don't like to talk ill about the pastors, but the so-called pastor have deceived us with all sort of holier than thou kind of persona and scriptures. They will start thinking that, if you don't do certain things, something like this will happen to you and the likes and all of that. That is why it is important for every individual, for every one of us to understand that you must have a personal relationship with your God. Do you understand? And churches today, I'm sorry, I've turned to a business center. However you look at a lot of eateries today, Marshall. In the evening, they turn it to a place. I'm not saying it is wrong. We can pray anywhere, even right here. We can, where 2 or 3 people are gathered, you can pray. You can come together. But I just feel that the deceit is too much, and the fact that quite a number of us, let me tell you down to our own side of town, to Nigeria, we've been brainwashed with all sorts because of, a lot of challenges that we are facing. There are certain things that if they are working at the moment, quite a number of people will not be going to church today. quite a number of people will not go to any pastor and say, come and lay hands on my head and the likes and all of that. So, you know, I just feel that the likes of Daddy Freeze again, you know, debunking most of the scriptures that some of the pastors have put in the minds of their congregation. Do you understand? Hence the reason why quite a number of people do not like Daddy Freeze. Hence a lot of people, quite a number of people have a banter with him back and forth. But if you truly listen to what Daddy Freeze is saying, do you understand? It is quoting the scriptures verbatim. He's saying, oh, this about tithing. But quite a number of churches believe that they need to. I'm not saying that don't give offering, don't tithe or whatever. Do you understand? But my orientation of that has changed, and it is because of my understanding of the Bible today. It is because I've been able to take time to say, okay, let me learn a little bit about the scripture instead of the deception that they've used to shake the congregation or the followers. Do you understand? So to speak. So in short, I just feel like what is enough for the wise? Truly, for anybody at this age and time still following pastors, so-called imams, do you understand, and be giving them money unnecessarily, they'll be seeing all sorts of visions, fake visions. I'm sorry to say that, but really, only God knows who is serving him. Look at this pastor at the moment. How do you have such might to say you want to defraud? And that is where power of character comes in. I cannot help but keep, you know, projecting the book Dr. Miles Monroe wrote, one of his books, you know, on power of character. You know, I feel that is also what is lacking our leaders. A pastor in any church is a leader. So what examples have you left for your congregation? Tomorrow, if you hear that one of your followers are into whatever, you know, and ESCC is after those young boys, because does he have the right to want to say he wants to correct them? It's unfortunate, but I'm glad that at least the law caught up with him, and it will set an example for others. It's unfortunate that we have to just wrap up right now. And,
okay. I wanted to say a few things.
No, go ahead, please.
Yes. Well, for me, just coming back on that pastor's matter, I really do not like finding myself in the environment where I'd have to, you know, generalize what men of God, so-called men of God, do, whether it is in the Christian faith or in the Muslim faith. I would rather keep it to the man who has been apprehended. But that said, Kike, to a very large extent, I'm very happy for you that you've been liberated. You've discovered your inner joy and glory in terms of what your judgment, your inner judgment of yourself. You've discovered it, and I'd encourage you to keep it to, you know, within.
Have you?
Yes, keep it. Sorry?
Have you?
If I have? Well, I know myself, and that's why I will not generalize, you know, what pastors or men of God do. We've seen very heinous things done in very, very strange places, not just in churches, not just in mosques. We've seen it done in schools. We heard about the proprietor who killed his own student, who went to the house of the student and abducted this child and, you know, killed the child. We had another proprietor who abducted this child from school. And when the parents came to pick up the child, he said that the child had already been picked. And days later, we heard the child was killed and ransom was requested. She was killed and buried in the school premises. So it's not just about men of God. Yes, there's a lot of deceit going on in the name of the body of Christ, but we cannot rule out the fact that that body of Christ is sacred. And some bad eggs will not determine the overall output or outcome of what happens in the body of Christ.
On that note, this is where we draw the curtains of the show. With that, I just want to say many thanks for keeping it real, for holding it down while we're having a lot of network
front and back with our prof.
With our prof. Unfortunately, we'll have to invite him on another day. With this, we've come to the end of another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. And of course, Real Talk with Kike is turning 3 2nd of October to be precise. There are a lot of giveaways right now, and I just want to use this opportunity to say thank you to my sponsors. Thank you to all those who have been very supportive. You know, you would like to follow me or at Real Talk with Kike on IG and other platforms. Of course, there are a lot of details out there. I'll be announcing many giveaways in the next few days. Please, if you're going to be dropping any comment, let me put it out there. Drop your comment under the post. Don't go of my previous posts, I'll be saying you commented there because I will not go and look there. All right, many thanks again. So we'll come your way next week. Try to be kind to one another and put a smile on somebody's face. Bye now.